Welcome to Mountain Strong. Just a few minutes ago we were at Kincaid Park and it was my intention to stay there for the duration of the shoot today, but I kept on following footprints and I kept on heading west. There's a saying, "Go west, young man," and that's exactly what I did. And I found myself, after ducking through some trees, I came to an opening and I realized I'd come all the way to the Cook Inlet here to the sea, and that I'd actually stumbled into the Anchorage Coastal Wildlife Reserve. But the scene was so beautiful that I decided I'd go ahead and shoot here. And so I really hope that this shows up. But there are some mountains in the background just to the left of me. The tide is coming back in and you have this beautiful ice field. It's just a really cool place. I know I say that a lot, but it really is a cool place. Well, anyway, today we are having a look at Psalm 31. Psalm 31, let's read it together. In you, O Lord, do I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear to me, rescue me speedily. Be a rock of refuge for me, a strong fortress to save me. For you are my rock and my fortress, and for your name's sake you lead me and guide me. You take me out of the net they have hidden for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God. I hate those who pay regard to worthless idols, but I trust in the Lord. I will rejoice and be glad in your steadfast love, because you have seen my affliction, you have known the distress of my soul, and you have not delivered me into the hand of the enemy. You have set my feet in a broad place. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief, my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength fails because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away. Because of all my adversaries I have become a reproach, especially to my neighbors, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street flee from me. I have been forgotten like one who is dead. I have become like a broken vessel. For I hear the whispering of many, terror on every side, as they scheme together against me, as they plot to take my life. But I trust in the Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from my persecutors. Make your face shine on your servant. Save me in your steadfast love. O Lord, let me not be put to shame, for I call upon you. Let the wicked be put to shame. Let them go silently to Sheol. Let the lying lips be mute, which speak insolently against the righteous in pride and contempt. O how abundant is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you, and worked for those who take refuge in you, in the sight of the children of mankind. In the cover of your presence you hide them from the plots of men. You store them in your shelter from the strife of tongues. Blessed be the Lord, for he has wondrously shown his steadfast love to me when I was in a besieged city. I had said in my alarm, I am cut off from your sight, but you heard the voice of my pleas for mercy when I cried to you for help. Love the Lord, all you saints. The Lord preserves the faithful, but abundantly repays the one who acts in pride. Be strong, and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord. This psalm presents two mutually exclusive ideas. On the one hand, you have trouble, and on the other hand, you have trust. Now you say, well, why are those mutually exclusive ideas? Not by virtue of both of them existing at the same time, because the Christian is called to trust in times of trouble. The way in which they are mutually exclusive is that there's only one of these things that can be allowed to absorb your vision or absorb your mind at a time. And I like to think about it like this. The person who trusts in God can see troubles for what they are. They are one spot in the midst of a lot of other stuff happening. And so when troubles are kept in context, they really don't have any control or any strength or power over us. But when troubles are allowed to do what they want to do, when they are allowed to cloud our vision, when they are allowed to cover up our judgment, when they are allowed to fill our hearts and our minds, there's no room for trust. There's no room to be able to see things for what they are. And I think this psalm does a good idea of showing how those two things are going to combat each other and fight against each other. This psalm describes troubles. In verses 1 and 2, the psalmist says, "Help me." In verses 9 and 10, the psalmist says that he is losing strength, that he is losing life, his bones are wasting away. In verse 12, he describes how he feels forgotten. He describes in verse 13 how he has been preyed upon, and how in verse 11 he's surrounded by adversaries and even neighbors that are not helpful to him. All the people who could help him are fleeing from him, and so these troubles are all around him, and there seems to be no help. It would be very easy for him to allow all of those things to so cloud his mind and his judgment that he truly felt he was what the people said he was, that he truly felt alone, forgotten, verse 12. But watch how trust fights against that. Watch how trust causes the psalmist to say in the midst of this trouble, verses 3 through 5, that God is his rock and that he can commit himself to God. In verses 6 through 8, he describes the importance of hating idolatry because God is real, God is helpful. That idea forces troubles away from his field of vision. In verses 14 through 16, he describes how trust has caused him to be rescued from his enemies. He said, "My times are in your hand," in verse 15. "Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from my persecutors." And so again, trust allows him to see the rescue that is possible in God. He calls God, of course, in verses 17 through 18 to silence them. And then he realizes in verse 19 through 20 that he will be protected and that God protects those who are godly. In fact, when he begins to put all of these ideas in context, when he begins to allow trust to shine through and to drive trouble back from his field of spiritual vision, that's when he can reflect upon what God has done in the past. In verse 21, he says that the Lord has wondrously shown his steadfast love to me. That's past tense. He reminds himself of a time when he was in a besieged city. He had believed at that time that he was cut off from God's sight, but at that time he was heard by the Lord when he cried for help. And that reflection upon what God has done in the past is enough to totally restore his trust, to totally drive his trouble from his field of vision, to the point where he feels in verse 23 that the Lord will preserve the faithful and abundantly repay the one who acts in pride. And to the point where no longer is he thinking about himself, but he's thinking about others. In verse 24, "Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord." And so again, two mutually exclusive ideas. The idea of trouble, which craves our full attention, and the idea of trust, which in order for it to be powerful, must have the same, our full attention. If we trust in the Lord as we should, we will be reminded of how God has delivered not only us, but others in the past, how he has shown himself to be consistent, and how he will see us through the present trouble that we are facing. And so I will close with the powerful words that end this psalm: "Be strong, take courage, all you who wait for the Lord." Because God is a God who delivers from trouble, trust in him, and he will see that you triumph. God bless you.